that have boomed.
Power Lunch is proudly brought to you by LTech, leading technologies, touching lives.
Welcome back, and now in the Cape Town studios we've got Peter Earl. He's usually in London and he's the CEO of IPSA, Independent Power Producers, Southern Africa. And we've got an interesting electricity situation developing in the country, and IPSA is hopefully one of the people that are going to, or one of the companies that's going to be helping us through it. So Peter, where do we stand in terms of the current situation?
Well, it's all been changing fairly rapidly over the last 24 hours, so the information that I have is really what's available publicly. There were a number of unplanned outages, which means power plants which were supposed to be running, which are part of the Eskom fleet, went down for emergency maintenance, and that coincided with a cold spell moving up from the south. And there just isn't enough capacity, reserve capacity in the system to be able to deal with that. So Eskom, 24 hours ago, started to ask people to reduce the amount of power that they consumed. And if people don't reduce their power fast enough, Eskom has to take the very tough decision to shed load, as it's called, which means just cutting people off whether they like it or not. And that's an overall problem which isn't really going to be rectified until there is more new generating capacity, which is where IPSA comes in.
That's obviously the point, and I wanted to chat to you about that. Given that you've been listed roughly a year now on the Altex, you listed on AIM in 2005 and now on the Altex just after that. But has the electricity situation or the landscape in South Africa changed considerably in that time?
I don't think that the landscape has changed, but what you have to understand is that there is a very long lead time in building new power capacity in any country. The typical coal-fired plant will take 4 or 5 years to get to completion because you have to do all of the environmental approvals and the planning. And every single coal-fired plant is a bespoke plant tied into a particular location and a particular kind of coal. I think the problem really came 5, 6, 7 years ago when it was clear that electricity demand growth in South Africa was increasing as the economy picked up, but there had been really quite a lag in the approval process for new power plants being built, and those plants actually coming on stream. We, at the time of the London flotation, reckoned that there were going to be power cuts hitting South Africa at the end of 2006, and in fact we were probably about 12 months out. Those cuts started to hit Cape Town at the beginning of 2006, and the overall position in the country has, from the point of view of consumers, deteriorated, but I think that it was inevitable from 2006 onwards that not enough capacity was going to be brought on in time to meet the increase in demand. You also have to remember that a number of the older plants, as they come to the end of their useful life, and these are coal-fired plants built in the 70s and 80s, need more maintenance. And so you actually have to take them offline to do that maintenance. And it means as the fleet of Eskom plants ages, there's going to be more and more downtime by comparison with how they were 10, 15 years ago. And I think that people in the street just don't understand how elaborate it is, the whole fabric of power generation and transmission to get the electrons into their homes to fire up their TVs and fridges. It's a big job and it's very complicated. And if you're operating at the margin and you don't have enough marginal capacity, someone is going to have to be asked to turn off their equipment. And if they don't respond quickly enough and reduce the amount of power they use, then Eskom has to make the tough decision who's going to get cut off, whether they like it or not.
Peter, looking at what IPSA brings to the table, then you specialize, or you've started out with combined cycle gas turbines. Why did you start with gas?
You have to look at the experience of the IPSA team. IPSA was originally part of Independent Power Corporation, one of the United Kingdom's leading power developers. And over the last 12 years, we've developed, owned and operated over 5,000 megawatts of gas-fired plant. We've also owned and operated 1,000 megawatts of coal-fired plant. Just to put megawatts into context, the peak demand in South Africa is around 36,000 megawatts, and the effective capacity on a good day of the Eskom fleet is about 38,000. So Independent Power Corporation has been quite a big player in the power development market. But our specialization isn't building coal-fired plants, it's gas-fired plants, and those plants can be brought online in, if we're really fast, 12 to 15 months instead of the 4 to 5 years that it takes to bring on a coal-fired plant. So our thinking was we would build South Africa's first gas-fired power plant just to show that we could do it. We did it with our own money, we did it without any upfront contracts for electricity, and we did it as a state-of-the-art combined cycle plant where we used the waste heat from 2 gas turbines to produce electricity from steam which is produced from heat which would otherwise go up into the atmosphere. So our Newcastle plant is a state-of-the-art low CO2 producing plant. For every megawatt installed at Newcastle, we put out a quarter of the CO2 when we're operating at full capacity, a quarter of the CO2 of a typical Eskom coal-fired plant. So we're super green, we generate carbon credits. We will be generating carbon credits in South Africa, and it's really, that plant was a showcase for the technology that South Africa has to incorporate in order to have a balance of gas turbine power plants matching the preponderance of coal-fired plants, which is Eskom's legacy. So we started out with gas.
Are there any issues or relating to the importation of gas, or any problems potentially with the fueling of these gas stations?